Hello once again, I'm aronmsound. Welcome back to the show. This is Look Up, the show where I interject myself into a conversation where nobody invited me to be a part of it. Only in due course of time in order to expand and try to take that conversation somewhere it didn't intend to go. Oftentimes, to reveal, between you and I, the mental prisons that hold us all in from being the best self that we can be and finding the pathways that really, truly give us the best options. And today, as opposed to looking at one of the crazy dating universes that seems to epitomize all that is wrong with our mindsets these days, I'm sharing with you a little bit of what I have come to know as the understanding of how the universe itself is manifesting around us and how we take part in that. So, trigger warning. If you're a highly religious individual, this may not be for you because you may not want to know the nature of reality. If you're fine clinging to a monotheistic idea, then this is not the video for you. You probably want to go back and eat that red pill and, stay in that one reality. But if you're not one of those people, then I'm going to say to you right now, hang on, strap yourself in, because I'm going to share with you one of my favorite shows. It's called The Y-Files. And AJ on this show, and Hecklefish, although tongue-in-cheek many of the times, are the best debunkers and information science followers, if not the best orator and scriptwriter that I've found so far on the use of the tubes. So before too long, without much further ado, I'm going to take us where you may have never been. And I want to help you expand your consciousness by recognizing, ladies and gentlemen, hobos and tramps, cross-eyed mosquitoes and bullock ants, that you and I, we live in a simulation. Now, it doesn't mean that we're not real, because everything is real. But what it does mean is something even more fantastic than that. You see, we're producing computationally the best possible outcome. Maybe not for now, but now is truly a very tiny grain of sand in the many universes theory. Now, I say theory because the outcomes and the finalities of these concepts are not yet fully known. But what we do know from CERN's smashing of atoms, protons against one another, is that symmetry, repetition, and computational value can be found in the smallest of all particles. What does that mean, Aaron? Well, I'll tell you right now. Nothing is an accident. So if you believe that there's a higher power, I'm about to teach you why you can have faith that all of us have figured out a way at some point in time to create the higher power for never-ending existence. Come with me. This is the Y-Files. My reaction to the evidence we are living in a simulation is simply everywhere. Once again, it's the Y-Files. Don't forget to like and subscribe down below. Like and subscribe on the Y-Files. I'm aronmsound. This is Look Up. And we're responding to today the evidence we are living in a simulation, and it's everywhere. Come on, folks. Check it out with me.
Is this reality? Well, we're experiencing something right now, so maybe the better question is, what is reality? Could everything we see, everything we experience, everything that exists in our entire universe be artificial? Supporters of simulation theory believe that not only is it possible that we're living in a simulation, it's likely. And the more we look for evidence, the more we find. Let's find out why. The idea of the universe being a simulation is not a new one. Theories exist in ancient cultures around the world. Modern simulation theory comes from Nick Bostrom, a philosopher at Oxford who wrote an influential paper on the subject in 2003.
Nick Bostrom is one of the first scientists to feel strongly enough about the mathematics and then the theories that he was able to evolve out of the mathematics. Enough to say, I'm seeing symmetry in ways that shouldn't be in a natural state. Symmetries that go on and on and on. And small reactions that may answer the reason why you and I have deja vu, the Mandela effect, and so many more things. But more importantly, that reality is responding to us. And when I say this, I want you to keep in mind that just this year, 3 scientists won the Nobel Prize for finding that reality is local.
Assuming that living in a simulation is possible, Bostrom presents the simulation trilemma, which says one of the following must be true. 1, we destroy ourselves before we're able to create a simulation.
Unlikely.
2, we're able to create a simulation but choose not to. Or 3, we are definitely in a simulation. Bostrom believes each of these is equally likely to be true. Now, I don't think that's controversial. We use computer models to study the human population, predict the weather, for entertainment. We simulate everything. And when a civilization can create a realistic simulation, the most obvious one to create is that of its own early existence. Bostrom calls this an ancestral simulation. And a
I believe that what we're seeing in that comparative are things like The Sims and Second Life and the 35 people on Meta. These are our beginning stages of the simulation from our point of view. If you've ever watched Rick and Morty, there's a great episode about Rick creating a battery, and that battery is a tiny civilization. And then that battery civilization decides that it needs its own batteries. So it develops its own battery civilization, and on and on and on and on. And that comes from Bostrom's theory that inevitably the simulation creates a simulation of itself, perpetrating what is also known as the metaverse. Now, you may ask what the difference between the meta and the omni is. It's pretty simple. The omni is the outside and the meta is the internal. So within each of the simulations is a meta-universe creating another meta-universe. Whereas on the outside of the simulation is the omniverse perpetuating never-ending universes. And it gets even weirder.
That can do this would just create one simulation. It would create many. And those simulated civilizations might create their own simulations of the universe, and on like Russian nesting dolls of reality.
Now you're a character in that world and you think you have free will and say, I want to invent a computer, so you do. Hey, I want to create a world in my computer. And then that world creates a world in its computer. And then you have simulations all the way down.
When Elon Musk was asked what he thought the chances were that our reality is the original base reality,
the odds that we're in base reality is 1 in billions.
When you consider that this is a computational interaction, it's highly likely that the universe has been spitting itself back and forth for trillions and trillions and trillions and possibly quadrillions of eons, sustaining itself by spitting like a cannon through a tunnel of a black hole known as the singularity. So, the likelihood of us being prime reality, well, that's just not likely at all. The likelihood of us being a reality perpetrating a new computational outcome, well, that's very likely. And when you take it that next step, you realize that we can be proud, each and every one of us, to say that we're fulfilling our own greatest destiny, even if right now we're not fully experiencing it. We will, and we're feeding our own computation.
Neil deGrasse Tyson is a little more conservative. He thinks the odds that we are in base reality versus a simulated reality is 50-50. A 50-50 chance that everything we experience is artificial high. Even though we mostly hear what scientists think about this, it's not scientific theory. Simulation theory isn't math, it's philosophy. It isn't physics, it's metaphysics. So what we need is hard evidence that we live in a simulation. And to find proof, all you have to do is look.
So, let's go over this real quickly, and just to reiterate, it's not 100% in the minds of all the physicists that we're fully in a simulation, or where we are in the simulation, but they all agree currently that it is most likely. 50-50 has actually been changed to 60-40, and recently, the concept of us not being a simulation, simply because we hadn't perpetrated a full simulation of ourselves, was knocked down, because it could be that we're just not there in our own timeline yet. Once again, we're not there in our own timeline yet, but we're heading there.
Let's start at the beginning. There was no space or time. The contents of the entire universe were concentrated to the size of a tennis ball and had a temperature of a quadrillion degrees.
Which, by the way, we can see now, and we've seen through telescopes looking at the end of the universe. And when you ask, well, what happened before the Big Bang? What was going on? Well, the central point in the middle of a funnel, all the energy of the universe dying out and being shot back through a massive black hole that forces everything into a Planck model singularity. That's what happened at the beginning of time. And yes, the beginning of time is just the beginning of this era. Think about that. That time is never ending. And by saying that, it makes the story of Sisyphus, Kronos, and the snake who finds its tail a deeper truth that dates all the way back to pre-Greek times, which means that someone on this planet has always known that we're living in a realm of unlimited possibility. Now, this brings me to my point that I'm often making about who benefits from what you don't know? And who benefits from keeping you in a limited idea set? Because the universe is malleable, and we, together, made it that way.
Then suddenly, the Big Bang. Everything explodes outward faster than the speed of light. Then about 14 billion years later, we've got galaxies and planets and ice cream and K-pop.
Ice cream.
Yeah, I could do without the K-pop.
Me too. Okay, if before the Big Bang there was no space and no time, what was there? What about the beginning of the universe from the religious point of view? God created everything. Fine. Where was he before? What caused the Big Bang to happen in the first place? Or what made God decide to snap his fingers or wiggle his nose or whatever he did to make everything happen? If you ask a physicist to explain what existed before the universe, they'll give you an answer about quantum foam, dark energy, or something just as bonkers as the Big Bang. Ask a theologian what existed before God created the universe, and you'll get an answer equally as confusing. But what does make sense is that the universe was just sitting there dormant. Then someone somewhere decided to boot up a program. And in that program, our program, are all the laws of the universe. Electromagnetism and gravitational force are written into the program. The speed of light gets a value. There's code for Planck's constants of mass, speed, and time. Avogadro's number is in there, along with a bunch of other rules that govern the behavior of everything that exists.
And most importantly, the Fibonacci sequence. But let's talk about this for a second. One of the things that I find most intriguing about all this is that when you look at electrons in an electron microscope inside of a computer, what you see is very, very similar, if not exactly, what we see at the beginning of time and what is described as the program coming into play. Because electrons suddenly shoot out from a single source and bandy about in a limited plane. One of the most important things about the concept that you should think about is this is no different than the environment of a video game. Now, in a video game, the computer is not creating the entire world around you. It's just the world that you need to be able to see. And now we know this is true. And scientists, 3 of them, have just won a Nobel Prize because of this. Now, does that mean that reality isn't real? No, of course it means reality is real. It just means it functions in a way that maybe you and I can benefit from, and others utilizing this knowledge try to keep us from benefiting from. When it comes right down to it, we're only aware of what we've been shown.
All part of our program. Even consciousness itself is part of our simulation. If you've never heard of simulation theory, then this might sound far-fetched.
Even more far-fetched and crazy sounding is the fact that the laws that are embedded in this simulation keep us from seeing the simulation being built. For instance, the rule of the speed of light keeps us from beating light to its end result. So we can't get to the spot that's being built faster than the light. And the light reflects off of matter. What a convenient governor to reality to not be able to make it faster than light. So you could never see matter build, which is exactly how video games work.
But some of the world's most respected scientists, technologists, and philosophers believe that it is more likely than not that we are living in an artificial reality. So, how do we prove it? If we live in an artificial reality, it would make sense for there to be occasional glitches. Philip K. Dick is one of the most influential science fiction writers of all time. Movies based on his books include Blade Runner, Total Recall, Minority Report, The Adjustment Bureau, and plenty of others. He believed there are many universes, and sometimes those other realities bleed into ours. He claimed to have visions of this, and even wrote stories like The Man in the High Castle based on these visions.
One of the interesting things about this concept of realities bleeding into one another can be seen at Skinwalker Ranch and many other places just like it that seem to be intermingling with the reality possibly next to us, or a holographic reality that has overlapped our own. Meaning that maybe somewhere else in the holographic realities, somebody has figured out how to transfer themselves to another computational possibility. Sounds wild, I know, but there is all kinds of evidence, all kinds, for every single one of these things. And this is all scientific fact. We're not talking about lore and creatures anymore. These things can be provable with zeros and ones and repeated scientific method. What's Philip K. got to say?
That in fact, plural realities did exist, superimposed onto one another like so many film transparencies.
One way other realities blend into ours could be the Mandela effect. The Mandela effect is when a large number of people have memories of events that don't match reality. This is called the Mandela effect because millions of people specifically remember Nelson Mandela died in prison. He didn't. People remember his wife walking beside his casket in a funeral procession that was on television for 2 hours that day. This never happened. Or the Berenstain Bears, which people insist were always called the Berenstein Bears. People remember the tycoon from Monopoly having a monocle that he never had.
My brain.
What was Darth Vader famous for saying?
Luke, I am your father.
Nope. He never said that.
What?
Nope.
What about Stouffer's stovetop stuffing?
Best part of Thanksgiving.
Yep.
No, it isn't.
Nope.
Because
Not
there's no such
Stouffer's.
product.
Your brain
Stovetop
is
is made by Kraft.
No.
No.
The evil queen from Snow White who looked into her mirror and said,
Mirror, mirror on the wall.
Yes.
Nope.
Magic mirror on the wall. Who is the fairest?
Of them all. Brain melted yet?
My reality is shattered.
Yeah.
People remember Febreze being spelled with 2 E's. People remember Jiffy peanut butter, but there's no such thing.
And let's talk about Sinbad and the movie where he played a genie. I have personal experience with this, and it's the most messed up thing. And I am not confusing it with Kazam, which is the movie that had Shaq as a genie. Let's not get into it, but I had some experience with this that truly hurt my soul. And there's video that shows me in a place I shouldn't be. But there I am. I don't remember it that way. And even stranger, my passport proves that I was where I thought I was, but the video says otherwise. So without going into too much detail, I'll just say, personally, I have a very in-depth and what concerned me deeply initially, personal experience with the Mandela effect. And many people do. But let's hear more.
And there are a lot more. A lot more. Personally, I don't have most of these false memories, but there are a few that get me. The Flintstones. There are 2 T's in the Flintstones.
2 T's
I
now.
remember just one. And what about the Fruit of the Loom logo? I could swear it looks like this,
With
but
the
it doesn't.
cornucopia?
This is the actual logo. No cornucopia.
Corny what now?
Basket.
Then just say basket for crying out loud.
And at the end of Moonraker, a terrible but excellent James Bond movie, I remember Jaws' girlfriend as having braces. I mean, I specifically remember
Right?
it.
Didn't she have
She didn't have braces.
No. What? Mind melted.
I just can't get my brain to accept it.
Mind
That's the Mandela effect.
melted.
So why do millions of people distinctly remember different things?
Glitch in a simulation.
Yep. Philip K. Dick also felt when we experienced deja vu, it's because something in our simulated universe changed and a new timeline branched off of the current one.
We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed.
Ever feel like you've lived a moment before? That's because, according to Philip K. Dick and others, you have.
Deja vu isn't just that you've lived another life. It's the fact that we are living this reality over and over and over again, with minute adjustments each time. Now, in between our life, we go into stasis. And when time starts over again, we reemerge when we're needed from the computer program to relive this time a little bit different and a little bit better each time, learning from our mistakes the last time, which explains the experience of reincarnation. You weren't someone else, you were you, and you've always been you. So come on, folks, let's make some good choices. We keep living this thing over and over again. So if you're living in hell and you believe in that, well, guess what? You really are.
Deja vu is the simulation correcting itself with new information. But skeptics can easily dismiss these theories. The human mind is terribly unreliable. They don't accept this as evidence. But we're not done yet.
And what does it mean when all of us, or a large portion of us, remember something wrong? Because you too can pull the wool right over your own eyes.
In a huge universe, 200 billion trillion stars. And even if life is rare, you'd think there'd be some evidence of it somewhere. This is Fermi's paradox. And according to the Drake equation, there should be over 1 million technologically advanced civilizations just in our galaxy. And on average, the nearest one should be just a few hundred light years away. But there's nothing, at least not that we can see. So where is everybody? Are we really alone in the universe, or does our program only focus on us? And what about the physical rules that are in place? Max Tegmark, a cosmologist at MIT, said the strict laws of physics point to the possibility of a simulation. Putting a cap on the speed of light sure is a good way to keep your Sims from venturing out too far from home. Theoretical physicist James Gates thought simulation theory was crazy. Then he started studying quarks and electrons. He found error-correcting code buried deep inside the equations used to describe string theory.
So you're saying as you dig deeper, you find computer code writ in the fabric of the cosmos?
Into the equations that we want to use to describe the cosmos, yes.
Computer code.
Computer code, strings of bits of ones and zeros.
Dr.
Down at the smallest place in all of reality. That's what he's saying. A self-healing code of zeros and ones. The same thing we use in our computers. And the only way to start building the cosmology of reality is to use this. Now, you may be saying, Aaron, are you saying there's no God? I didn't say that. I'm just saying that it's not the way we have been told it is. It's not as limiting. And it's leading scientists to believe that it's self-propagating, which means that it's you and I creating reality all together as a mass force so that we can all experience sentience forever. Which brings me back to the story of Kronos, Sisyphus, and the snake who finds its tail. Because time itself, Kronos, sent physical embodiment, Sisyphus, to get rid of and destroy the never-ending, the reality that would not die. Because otherwise, Kronos had to stay there with it. And when Sisyphus fails, he was forced to push a stone uphill for all of eternity. Meaning, physical reality must now exist alongside the computational reality, paired as one. Because if Kronos is going to be there, well, Sisyphus, you got to be there too. Pretty wild, considering that that story is pre-Grecian times.
Gates has changed his mind about simulation theory. In 2017, a group of scientists at the University of Washington proved they can embed computer code into strands of DNA. Everything in nature is math. Look at the Fibonacci sequence. You get the Fibonacci sequence by adding two previous numbers in the sequence together.
By the way, Fibonacci is also how we get fractal in math. And if you've never seen a fractal, go look it up. It'll illuminate you to how things at the smallest level really look. But as you get further and further out, or the further and further in you get, you will see a repetition that seems to change constantly while still remaining the same pieces. Let me say that again. It is an image that changes constantly while still made up of the same small pieces. Sound familiar?
So 1 + 1 = 2, 2 + 1 = 3, 3 + 2 = 5, 5 + 3 = 8, and so on forever. You get the golden ratio, also called phi, by dividing two consecutive Fibonacci numbers. So the number 89 is a Fibonacci number. The next number in the sequence after 89 is 144. 144 divided by 89 is the golden ratio. It's about 1.618.
Everything, as he's about to say, has the golden ratio. Every single living thing has the golden ratio. Every single thing in the universe has the golden ratio. And don't forget what we're talking about here. Symmetry, where there should be inevitable chaos. But these limitations make it, not unlike a computer program, easier to reproduce consistently while using the same amount of energy.
See Fibonacci numbers and the golden ratio everywhere. The number of petals on a flower is usually a Fibonacci number. Lilies have 3 petals, buttercups have 5, chicory has 21, and a daisy has 34. And the spacing of each petal is arranged in a circle according to the golden ratio. As trees grow, the number of branches they form is a Fibonacci number. And not just plants, animals too. The ratio of female to male honeybees in a colony is the golden ratio, 1.618. The human body conforms to the golden ratio too. Most of the body follows the numbers 1, 2, 3, and 5. 1 nose, 2 eyes, 3 limb segments, 5 fingers, 5 toes. The proportions of the body, like the length of your shoulder to your elbow, and from your elbow to your fingertips, that's the golden ratio. Even a DNA molecule measures 34 angstroms long by 21 angstroms wide. Fibonacci numbers and the golden ratio. From the spiral of seashells to the spiral of a galaxy and everything in between, Fibonacci numbers are everywhere. Now, some claim this is a coincidence, that humans look for patterns in chaos because that's what we're programmed to do.
What we're programmed to do.
And isn't that interesting? By trying to debunk simulation theory, they actually end up proving it. No matter what we study, whether it's something the size of a galaxy or as small as an electron, everything in the universe seems to follow patterns and rules. In other words, a program.
Denial is the most predictable of human responses.
To simulate an entire universe, you'd obviously need more advanced technology than we have. But that doesn't mean we won't get there. Moore's law says that computing power doubles every 18 months. And this is held true for about...
And this is most important to the entirety of this concept. Because when scientists who debate this try to knock the idea, they suggest that there isn't enough energy to support this kind of simulation. But the argument against this turns out to be that we are the energy source in the end. and that the entirety of the energy of the Omni is used repeatedly like a slingshot to repeat the process over and over. So it's self-propagating energy. That's one of the most magical things about this. It's us and everything else that will ever be sentient all at once, computing the best possible outcome. Bonded together in one energy magnetic field. Essentially, a Planck dinosphere. It's exciting, actually. And it should give you faith in us. And you don't have to worry about some unseen force that, you have to believe in to do right. You don't need that when you find out that we're getting a chance to experience and fix that experience along the way.
50 years. Now that is slowing down a little bit, but only because of physical limitations. Assuming we can learn to make microchips smaller, and there's no doubt that we will, it's predicted that artificial intelligence could surpass human intelligence within the next 100 years.
Considering that we've got supercomputers, and now we have quantum computers, and we're recreating black holes inside of the computers accurately, I believe that we'll be seeing an integration of ourselves into technology before the end of the century. And then we'll become one, sharing like a beehive, instantaneous information, which will lead us to this personal supercomputer positioning, making ourselves the Planck model as a singularity, as a species, which is how we combine ourselves with the rest of the galactic known being, and in the end create ourselves into the supercomputer, sharing all information at once so that we can repeat the computational process and find the best outcome for the Planck model singularity, which is us at the center, and let's call it the silver spiral.
As Elon Musk points out, when he was a kid, the world's most advanced video game was Pong.
It was awesome.
2 rectangles on a screen.
Awesome.
40 years later, video game technology is barely distinguishable from reality. He said that 6 years ago. And even in that short time, video game engines have become even more realistic. Look at this footage from Unreal Engine 5.
When a world we can build feels as real as our own.
Imagine what games are going to look like in the next 6 years, or the next 60, or the next 6,000. But simulating an entire universe, how big of a computer will we need? Well, it's estimated that there are 10 to the power of 80 atoms in the universe. Let me put that on the screen just for fun. Okay, that's a lot. If each particle needs 128 bits to calculate its position and momentum, you're at 10 to the power of 83 bits. And that's just for data storage. We also need computing power to track what each of those particles is doing.
Now, what he's about to talk about is a really far-out concept called a Dyson sphere, which is involved with a Class 4 civilization. We are barely, as a civilization, at Class 1. So a Class 4 civilization is as high as we can imagine currently in a technical status of a civilization's value. And they have the capability of capturing a dying star and building a machine around it and reusing that energy to fuel their own environment. And I would postulate that this is how we start in the future. Ourselves as the silver spiral computational device, aka the Planck singularity.
If we say 2 floating point operations per second, or 2 flops per particle, we're at 2 times 10 to the 80th power flops. There aren't even words for these numbers. And this is the computing power for just the stuff in the universe. What about human intelligence? The human brain can perform 100 trillion calculations per second, or 100 teraflops. Multiplied by billions of people, the numbers are ridiculous. To power all of this, the simulation would need access to multiple Dyson spheres, the megastructures that capture 100% of the energy of a star. Or the simulation would have to harness the energy from black holes.
This is most likely actually what's going on, is that a Dyson sphere has been moved into the center of a black hole, creating a Planck singularity that allows us to hold ourselves in the center, never moving outside of a timeless warp, but capturing the info as it folds back and forth in the envelope. Now currently, images of the known universe look like an orb or an egg, and that suggests that we are the plume undulating out from the center of a tube-like wormhole. And as that plume passes by the central vortex, that is how the information is gathered for the silver spiral, which is why there's a simulation at all.
Famous physicists like Dr. Michio Kaku are not on board with simulation theory. He claims that simulating a universe is not scientifically possible. The only computer capable of simulating a universe is the universe itself. Now, at first glance, this makes sense. But with all due respect to Dr. Kaku, that's not how simulations work. When you're playing a 3D video game, the entire game world isn't rendered. Instead, the game engine only calculates what the player can see and interact with at that specific moment. If we are living in a simulation, then it would make sense that the creators of the simulation would use a similar technique.
And we know now that science backs up this idea that reality is actually only manifesting locally. Let me say that again. Reality is only manifesting locally. So once it's outside of a purview or an observed position, technically it's not forming physically. So yes, reality does not exist when you're not there. It's not being observed. And no, a tree does not make a sound in the forest unless the other trees have ears.
And wouldn't it be interesting if there was evidence that this is exactly what happens?
Well, wait a minute. Do we have proof? Sweet fancy Moses!
Yes, there is proof. Yeah. You think that's there?
Supporters of simulation theory often point to video games as a way to explain, if not prove, that our reality is artificial. In a video game, the only data that is rendered is what the player sees or interacts with. If you're playing a video game and there's a car or building a mile away, that entire object isn't rendered. The game engine only renders the bare minimum of information to make the object look real. A distant building is rendered as just a few pixels, not that complicated. As you get closer, the engine renders more details, but still, it's just a facade. The engine doesn't bother calculating what's inside the building until you actually go in. The game engine always knows how much data to send you and doesn't bother with anything else. If we live in a simulation, it would make sense that our reality is rendered the same way. And we could test this.
Wait, what do you mean we can test this?
Specifically, we can use the double slit experiment. Here's how it goes. If we fire particles in a straight line at a screen, after passing through a single slit, we would expect to see this clumping pattern on the screen. If we try this with a wave, we expect to see a pattern like this, where particles are most dense in the middle of the screen but radiate outward, similar to the clumping pattern. When we add a second slit, it starts to get fun. When the waves pass through the double slit, each slit creates its own wave. When those waves intersect, they cancel each other out. That creates a pattern like this. It's called an interference pattern. So particles passing through two slits create clumping patterns. Waves through two slits creates an interference pattern. Make sense?
I'm with you.
Good. If we fire electrons through the slit, we see the clumping pattern as expected. An electron has mass, so it's a tiny bit of matter. So if we fire electrons through two slits, we should see two clumps. But we don't. We see the wave interference pattern. This shouldn't be happening. What's going on here? For years, scientists assumed that the electrons were colliding with each other, causing the wave pattern. But in the 60s, the experiment was modified so that only one electron at a time was fired through the slits. There was no way the electrons could interact with each other. Yet we still see an interference pattern. Scientists wanted to see what was causing this, so they added a detector to observe electrons as they pass through.
Now you got a big eye!
The slits. That's when things go from weird
Big
to
eye for the slits
paranormal.
even.
As soon as the detectors were installed, the interference pattern went away and the clumping pattern returned.
So you catch that? When the protons were being observed, they did something different. That's weird. Are you saying matter does something different when it's observed? Holy mackerel. Yes, I am.
Take the detectors away and the wave interference pattern is back.
But that's a different result to what we had earlier. So here's the last bit of sneakiness that we can play with atoms. Surely now, we're going to get to grips with it. Leave the detector there, but just very quietly go and unplug it. Don't let the atoms know that you're not spying on them. Run the experiment again. Now, if you can explain this using common sense and logic, do let me know.
And a real magical thing happens.
Because there's a Nobel Prize for you.
It's as if the particles are aware they're being observed.
And
Then
they
physicist John Wheeler had an idea. He called it the delayed choice experiment. How it works is, photons are projected through the double slit, but the detector is not activated until after they pass through the slit, but before they impact the screen. Photons were emitted as waves, passed through the slits as waves, but when the waves were observed before hitting the screen, they suddenly behaved like particles.
And what it turns out is they don't just change into particles right there. No, they do something even crazier. Turns out those particles go back to the beginning of time, when they were perpetrated out of the Big Bang, and they change their behavior from the beginning to end up as a particle once observed by the scientist.
Again, still don't think there's an intelligence at work? Well, what Wheeler's experiment showed is that even though the electrons started as waves but behaved like particles after being observed, at the moment the decision to observe them was made, the electrons recorded themselves as having passed through the slits as particles. The electrons changed their state by going back in time.
I personally find that I gravitate more towards the information theoretic point of view and believing that the universe that I exist in is a very good, high-quality simulation.
Now, this experiment is happening on a table in a lab, a very short distance. So what happens when we observe light coming from vast distances, like say a galaxy 100 million light years away? If light from a distant galaxy is projected through the double slit, it creates the wave interference pattern. But if we push those photons through a measuring apparatus to observe them, the wave again collapses all the way back to its source. This is called retrocausality. Simply by choosing to observe the photons this way, they reach back through time 100 million years and alter their state on the other side of the galaxy. But like a video game engine, it only does this if we're looking. Even though our universe is full of galaxies, those galaxies may not actually be there. If we're living in a simulation, then stars and galaxies could simply be projections, and only when we get up close would those projections become more detailed. This is an excellent way to save computational resources. And because we're stuck with the hard limit of the speed of light, getting to far off places is really difficult. Limiting the speed of light is a useful rule to have in place. Quantum mechanics like the double slit experiment and quantum entanglement only make sense if there's a program at work, because only the program can ignore the laws of physics and ignore the concept of time itself.
And this brings me to the idea that these things are malleable, and we as humans want us so badly to limit these concepts because they're scary and they take out the accountability of some unknown force that you and I as small children were told to trust. But I say have faith in the greater picture, that it's evolving and learning from itself, and that it's intelligent because we're intelligent. And that intelligence is the whole of sentience, making sure it has the best possible experience forever.
A convenient case for simulation theory is you can't disprove it. The Big Bang, that was the simulation booting up. We haven't found aliens? They're not in the simulation. How come UFOs seem to violate the laws of physics? Well, because they're programs operated by the simulation creators. They don't have to follow the laws of physics.
Yeah, but who created the simulation?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? When you think of the simulation creator as an omniscient intelligence who exists outside of our understanding of space and time, it sounds an awful lot like you're describing God. And just like you can't prove we're not in a simulation, you can't prove there is no God. If something miraculous happens or something horrible happens, you can say it's part of the simulation just as easily as you can say it's part of God's plan. Something I find very interesting is that many believers of simulation theory are fierce atheists. They dismiss the idea of God as corny superstition. And there are plenty of devoutly religious people who dismiss provable science like evolution and the age of the Earth. People on the religious side say that if there is no God and life is just a simulation, then nothing matters. Without God to guide us and sometimes punish us, depending on what you believe, our actions don't have consequences. I disagree. Even if we don't live in base reality, we still live in our reality, and our actions here do have consequences.
And if we are perpetrating our own reality, to learn from it by repeating it as a computational exercise, then those accountability and responsibilities and the outcomes, well, they do affect us. And just because it's something different than what you were told doesn't mean you should say, lose faith, don't believe. No, if anything, this should reassure those who are faithful, who believe in a higher power, that there is such a thing because reality is being perpetrated on purpose. It's not an accident. It's a program. And it's figuring out the best possible outcome. Well, I'd like to thank AJ and Hecklefish, and I'd like to thank you for joining us. And don't forget to like and subscribe, both my program and the Y-Files. And keep watching, and I hope you got something out of today. At least to remember that when people are telling you that there's only one way to live, that there's only one way to see, that there's only one way to think or feel, you got to look them straight in the face and say, man, look up!